Welcome to Unboxed. I'm your host, Connie Nam, the founder of Astrid and Miyu. In these conversations, I speak to the founders of some of the most innovative, bold, and exciting businesses to discover the person behind the brand and what it took for them to build their empires. Hey guys, welcome to Unboxed. I'm Connie Nam, founder of Astrid and Miyu and your host. Today, we have one of our OG influencers, Lorna Luxe, who is also a founder of a high-end fashion brand called LA Space. Lorna shares how she grew an incredibly engaged audience on Instagram and how she took that to launch her own brand.
I would do anything and meet anyone. No one was off limits for me. I didn't post on Instagram to make money out of it. I just really liked it. We had the customer. We just needed to create the clothes.
Hi, Lorna. How are you?
Hello. This is exciting.
Yeah, really exciting. I'm so excited because we met, when was this? 8 years ago?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yes, when I hosted our very first influencer breakfast. You were there at Chiltern Firehouse, and both of us have grown so much.
Yeah, and I think as well, you were quite a new brand at that point.
We were a very niche find.
Yeah, you were, and the price point was good, and there wasn't really any competition back then that I remember.
No, there
so
wasn't.
It was quite exciting to see it begin.
Yeah.
It was quite a bougie little breakfast, that.
It
little
was.
Chiltern Firehouse
Thank you.
breakfast.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a huge investment at that point.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine.
Yeah, so it's so nice to see your journey. And obviously, we've been working very closely, and it's so nice to see you in person after 8 years. And I want to hear all about that journey from being an influencer to now a brand founder, LA Space. Congratulations.
Thank you. It actually does sound quite surreal because I think for such a long time I had the vision of having a brand. But of course, to get there, it took a fair old while. But when I met you, I think I wasn't really a commercial venture. I was an influencer, but I wasn't making money from it. I was just kind of pottering along.
Really?
Yeah, I think back then it was very difficult to commercialise your socials.
Yeah.
And I think I had quite a few followers back then. But it just wasn't what it is now.
No, it wasn't, because I think you had less than 100,000 followers at that point.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
And now you've got 1.4 million.
Yeah. And it's been quite steady as that. So it's not just been real million followers in a year or anything.
Yeah.
There's been a really steady progression for me.
And I think brands paying for influencers' content is quite new as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And of course now with influencer marketing kind of being the kind of gold standard, isn't it, for establishing a brand, which I'm learning myself. Back then, it was a little bit Wild West. You were there weren't the analytics there were.
No.
I don't even think I had access to analytics back then. So you invited me to a breakfast. You were taking a punt on me as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was kind of gamble, wasn't it?
Well, it was a great gamble.
Oh, thank you.
So tell me about your journey, because obviously you're younger than me, but you were older than the other influencers that was sitting on the table. And I just felt like you were that maturity, not in how you looked. You still looked young, but you just had this confidence. Do you think your prior experience as a flight attendant and being older helped in, becoming more commercial, or being more confident in speaking to brand founders or directors?
I definitely think being cabin crew, you worked with different crew each flight. So having that bravery to just work with people you didn't know, that is definitely useful in this game, because of course every time you turn up to an event or a breakfast like we did and you don't know anybody, you've just got to kind of throw yourself into it. So yeah, you're right, actually. Probably in that sense, it really helped. And I wasn't shy. And I'm not a shy girl anyway. I'm such a Leo.
No,
I'm a big
Are
believer.
you Leo?
Yeah.
My husband's a Leo.
Oh, I'm such a believer.
You're perfect for influencing.
Do you think?
You love showing off and
I think
getting
that's
attention,
it.
right?
There's that innate ability to be quiet when you need to be. But I think fundamentally I like being front and centre of attention.
I love Leos. That's why I love you.
Yeah, I think I do get on with other Leos, fiery signs. Yeah, I think the cabin crew thing, obviously primarily it's for customer service. That's what the job was. So having that customer service ability to just read people and quickly attune to what the vibe of the mood, or, it doesn't matter who it is, pretty much you can throw me with anyone and I'll find some kind of point of reference that we can both talk about. So that was quite handy. And I think I was that girl that desperately wanted to make it a success. So I would do anything and meet anyone. No one was off limits for me. I wasn't somebody that had kind of pinpointed a certain number of people I wanted to make friends with. I just wanted to be everyone's friend. So I would turn up to the opening of an envelope and just network. And networking's been key for my success, I think.
Where does that drive come from?
I think the drive that came initially was because I'd had a really rough few years. I'd had anorexia, and I'd gone through that kind of journey of trying to get well. And this was really my first new thing to focus on that wasn't related to my eating. So I really wanted to find a hobby that I loved. Back then, it was a hobby for me. It was not anything, like, I didn't look at it as a job. I didn't post on Instagram to like make money out of it. I just really liked it.
Yeah, and I think I read somewhere that being on Instagram helped you overcome
Yeah,
eating
it did.
disorder, which sounds
It's
completely counterintuitive.
I think the way I would describe it is that I was quite insular when I was in the depths of my eating disorder, because obviously anywhere with food and drink, I was actively avoiding. And then as my influencing or my Instagram took off, the content I wanted to create to stay kind of relevant started to include those shots where you're taking, a picture in a coffee shop, or, you're in a restaurant. And so John and I would go to these restaurants, him knowing that I was so kind of like thrown by the food and the experience of being watched to be eating. But actually I was going through recovery at the same time, forcing myself to do these things for the gram, to get the capture, to get that content. So actually it dragged me away from being very insular and isolating myself. It forced me to get back out there.
Yeah, I love that story, because people tend to think social media equates, bad for mental health. But in this case, it seems like it's really cured you.
I mean, it really did. And I didn't really have many mates, because I think the first thing you do when you're in the depths of any kind of addiction is you lose touch with people, because they're getting in the way, really, of you and your addiction. So I'd lost a lot of friends. And then when I got on social media, and I was a big community player, I would reply to my DMs, which I still do now. I'd reply to my messages, reply to any comments on my content. And I started to make friends from it. So I had all these mates from all over the world. I mean, I'm still mates with a lot of people that I met, in 2014, 15, when I first joined, even though we've never met, but we chat daily.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's absolutely mental. I've got mates that are in America. I've never met them. If they walk past me in the street, I probably wouldn't recognise them.
Wow. So how do you engage with them? Do you actually talk to them on a phone call, or is
No,
it
we
just
just
through
chat
a
on
DM?
DM, just texting and
Wow, that's incredible.
and like commenting on each other's content, which is, yeah. So it's for me, it was a saviour, if you like.
Yeah, I guess it's a new way of engaging and making friends.
Yeah, and watching some of them thrive. Some of them obviously don't do social the way I do it, but seeing some of them build brands like me, yeah, it's exciting to watch.
Yeah, with like-minded people.
Yeah.
And obviously, you've been so successful as an influencer. And when I look at your content, I just love the way you talk and engage. It's so authentic. What do you think is the secret sauce to being so successful and growing your followers exponentially? You say gradually, but I don't think many people have grown to that extent.
I definitely think that early adopter mentality of doing it before it became the big thing that it is now. So I had a bit of a leg up. And also, before lockdown, I never spoke to camera. So people didn't really know my personality. It was really all visual. It was only when we went into lockdown and we weren't allowed to go out of our houses. And I remember saying to John, oh my God, I'm a street style influencer. I can't go out and stand in the street. What am I going to do? And I eventually settled on just doing chatty stories each morning. I would just get on and do my makeup. But I think because I was coming on looking pretty ropey, I'd come on with no makeup, nothing on my face.
Those are the best content.
And it's fascinating to watch. I didn't realise then how interesting it would be to watch. But I think because we were so used to seeing everything perfect online pre-lockdown and everything being so glossy, myself included, I think it struck a chord with people that they were interested in it. I grew quite a lot actually in lockdown because of that. I acquired a new audience, if you like. And I think people didn't even know that I was from up north. Most people thought that I was very privileged and had grown up, very wealthy, because I didn't really show where we lived. We lived in a ground floor flat, so I was never posting about my house online because I didn't really want people to know where we lived. So it was all that kind of, oh my God, she's pulled back the curtain and she's just normal like us. And there was that relatability that maybe I hadn't had in my content before. So there was a bit of that as well. I've been really fortunate to maybe be vulnerable in periods of my life where it was rewarded. And I look at that chatty, throw myself bare. I always think that was a not deliberate, but a very smart decision for my Instagram at the time. You see a lot of people doing it now, so it's not maybe as a bigger deal, but back then no one else really did it.
Yeah, you're right.
And now TikTok obviously has kind of encouraged that movement of being so transparent. But yeah, back in, when was lockdown? 2020? Back then it wasn't really a thing. It was cool to be glossy and perfect.
Yeah. And you first appeared on national TV while someone was shooting a documentary about a fast fashion brand.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell me more about that experience.
Well, that was quite daunting at the time because I'd been designing a collection for a brand and it was going really well. And then it was kind of put on the table that they're going to have a documentary, and it was a BBC doc. So in your head, you're thinking it's not going to be too kind of, risque. I'm probably in safe hands. How did they feel about following me and John, for parts of my experience of developing a collection? So I think they came with us to France on an influencer trip. Do you know what? It was a good experience for me. And I don't think I came off badly from it.
Yeah. Was that a tipping point for your, personal brand?
It probably should have been, but no, I don't think it was. I don't think it had... I thought it would have more gravitas. I always thought being on telly...
Yeah, I would have thought so.
...would mean that I'd made it. And actually, I've just done a home show with Abby Clancy.
Yeah, I've seen a preview. I need to go watch it.
But the traction from that's been unreal. I've never known anything like it. And I've grown from that.
Yeah.
So I think it depends who is at the helm of the show, because Abby's got such clout in that sense that she's brought a lot of audience to me. But back then, I didn't feel like I actually got much from it. I think I cringed a little bit to listen, to the interactions between John and I and stuff. Like, oh my God, am I really sounding like that? But one thing that came from it was a lot of people said to me, oh my God, you're such a girl boss. Like, you were so bossy and, you were so driven.
Yeah, you came across really well.
Yeah, I knew what I wanted. And I still do. I think that's the key, really, isn't it? Knowing what you want.
Aside from being on the documentary, have you learned a lot of skills through that experience?
Through the experience of working with a brand, I think that I went into that experience not really feeling my oats. I felt like I was somebody that was a bit of kind of imposter. There weren't many influencers doing those collections at the time. It was mainly celebrities. But I knew I had quite an engaged audience. The community we'd built, they knew me, I knew them. So I was able to listen and chat. And I didn't design a collection off just like a whim. It was very much built on, what do you actually want? And I'll go and make it. And the team that I worked with on that first collection were just so positive and enthusiastic. So when we launched it, I think it sold out within the first day. I think then the brand were kind of like, wow, I didn't expect that.
Yeah. And since then, I think I've spoken to someone who used to work there during that period, and she said it was mental.
Yeah, it was. It was like a really big reaction that wasn't expected. Not even me expected it. And I thought, I found my calling here, because I really like clothes. And also back then, it was very much kind of it wasn't a size inclusive kind of place, was it? Shopping, fast fashion. Pretty much everything went up to about size 16. And I was kind of the person to be pushing, asking for more sizes. Let's just go a bit more varied. Let's do petite, let's do tall. That was really important to me, because I knew we had the customer. We just needed to create the clothes. So it was lovely. It was a great experience.
And you launched your own brand recently, LA Space. Tell me more.
Yeah, so LA Space launched officially in October of last year. So it's really new. It's like a baby. Do you know, I can honestly say it's the most terrifying thing I've ever done, because it's my own money. I had to kind of explain to John that we were going to use all my savings, that he'd probably been planning for other things, and be like, come on, let's back ourselves. Let's put something out there that's just truly us. I know we've got the audience, we've got the customer base there. The price point is slightly higher because, specifically with the numbers and the volume of what we're creating, it's very hard to get, any factory or supplier to do you a deal.
Yep.
So we've had to pay pretty much, whatever they want to make stuff. But in a way, that's been quite telling for me, because that price point that I had when I've created collections in the past was a lot less. And so it was a big gamble to go and make a higher kind of value item.
It's still quite accessible. I would call it accessible luxury.
It absolutely is accessible. And like up at the minute, the highest price point we have is a coat that's 400 quid. So it is accessible to people that are maybe looking to invest in their wardrobe long term. But it was still a lot more money than what people were used to spending with me.
Yeah.
And that's been really an education piece on my part to them, and vice versa, and explaining that we're using, less polyesters, we're using natural fibres, and some things are hand stitched. And, all those are really important things that actually you wouldn't know unless someone pointed it out to you.
Yeah. And how long was the planning process? And tell me all about it, and the concept behind it. Because you've got a very interesting concept. People are shopping from your mood board. I love that.
Yeah, I'd always had mood boards, and I'd always kind of brainstormed imagery every day. I mood board every day, always have done. I never know what I'm going to wear. So I always figured if I went on Pinterest and Tumblr and pulled together images, it'll eventually help me out of a rut when I don't know how to style my stuff. And so I'd had this mood board page called LA Space for years and years. And I'd just throw on images there that inspired me. So that was always going to be part of the process when I launched LA Space. But about a year ago now, I started to think, right, if I'm going to build a brand, I need to start hiring people to help me do this journey. I think the obvious solution when you're building a brand is to hire someone to create the product. And we didn't do that. The first thing we did was hire someone to build the brand. So the branding became the focal point of the content we first put out there. So before we had any product to market, any idea of what we were going to make, we started to create our brand, and we kind of wanted to position ourselves as a brand that wasn't specifically feminine or masculine. I wanted it to reflect me and the fact that I'm quite zero fuss. I don't like frou-frou, or I'm just not a fussy girl. So that was really exciting to be working with people that are at the top of their game in branding. The girl that developed our website had worked on Reformation and some really big hitter brands. And yeah, it was just incredibly exciting to see it all come together. And it was only once we had the branding nailed that I started to think about, what product do I want to make now that fits within that aesthetic.
How did you put together your first collection?
The first collection was always going to be a mood board of classics. So it was kind of like a benchmark for the brand to set our stall out. So you knew who we were about. You knew that the quality was there. I knew that I wanted certain pieces, things that I couldn't maybe find, or things that I'd bought in the past but it wasn't quite right. And we just started from there, really. I knew I was going to do a cotton T-shirt, because actually a T-shirt is a base foundation of all my other looks. So I needed things that if you wanted to put the whole look together, I wanted people to be able to buy the whole outfit, which actually most people don't tend to do. There's not many people that buy a full look from a shop. So it was quite nice to be able to build a capsule, if you like, that would always be the benchmark for the brand. And then the subsequent collections we've launched have been less about that. They've been more about just pieces that I love and really want to wear.
So you have to start with the first collection and then build on top of that.
I think you don't have to do that. I think we wanted to do that. And we deliberately bought volumes that, although a lot of them were minimums, we knew that we would be sat on those products for quite a while. I didn't invest in those pieces knowing that they'd sell out in a day. So that was kind of the plan. And I think anyone that is looking to build a brand from scratch, I think you have to be really smart with your buying. Like, my merchandiser was the third hire. And my merchandiser basically rules my world. Like,
oh, wow, that's quite advanced, because I feel like I didn't have a merchandising team until 5 or 6 years into the business. Yeah.
I feel like she's absolutely
but it's such an important role.
It's so important. At one point we wanted a buyer, and actually we thought, we don't need a buyer, we need a merchandiser, we need numbers. My husband, before he retired, he's a stats man. He was in pensions and insurance. So he's a real numbers bloke. So he loves it. He loves a spreadsheet. He loves talking about stats. He tells me, my merchandiser reports every week what isn't shifting, what's selling too quickly, what needs pushing, where we shouldn't maybe spend in the future. So it's a really good way of looking at who's your customer.
Yeah.
But then there's obviously things that we're not going to agree on. I'm sure my merchandiser would prefer it if I didn't do plus size. We got up to a size 24, and it's a really expensive venture in that to have plus size. Anything basically above size 16 is considered its own category by a supplier.
But it's part of your values to be inclusive, right?
I think it is. And I think that my community is inclusive. So it makes sense that I represent what I am and who I mix with. The customer isn't quite there yet for that. And that's been tough for me to watch.
Oh, that's so interesting. And you talked about the learning process of price points and things like that. Tell me more.
Well, obviously, again, merchandiser, king of pricing. We definitely do start a collection looking at what is our maximum RRP? What are we genuinely prepared to spend on this? And if we're not prepared to spend any more than that, then we don't make it if we can't bring it in under that price. There are always going to be those pieces that, for me, I'll be like, do you know what? We're not going to make much profit on it, but it'll get people through the door. It'll get them excited. I can't wait to wear it. I'm thrilled to have put this out to market. But is it going to pay my mortgage in 10 years? No. But I think pricing is so important. And we didn't want to be a discount brand. I can relate to this with Astrid and Miyu, because historically there aren't loads of discount codes attached to Astrid and Miyu. It's a premium product, and very rarely is there a code available. And I kind of wanted to mimic that in a way. And if we do a discount, it'll be maybe 2-3 times a year maximum. and will really think about it and
And
give
if you're
value.
priced fairly, you don't need to discount, right? Because you're already giving a good value to your customers.
Yeah, and the quality of just the packaging and the way that we deliver our products in nice little dust bags, and everything's been thought through, the silk tags, and everything feels good. And I'm proud to put my name to it.
Yeah. So how big is your team?
So the team right now, I've got, including John, because John is now working with me.
What is John's title?
John doesn't have a title. I think he kind of thinks of himself, he's looking over there, he kind of thinks of himself as like a co-founder, which he is. But I'd say that he is somebody that is basically my chief financial officer, even though he's probably not legally allowed to say that. But he's definitely somebody that's monitoring the finances. Yeah. And he's my go, no go. He will say, no, you can't order that. We can't book that because it's just not price efficient at all. So he's quite smart when the numbers are concerned.
Yeah, it's good to have a numbers person.
So good.
Yeah. So tell me about your relationship with John. So you were married and he joined you at Lorna Luxe a few years ago, and now he's de facto co-founder at LA Space.
Yeah, he'd always take my photographs for Instagram. So normally when he was at work, I think he used to start work at like 5 a.m, and he worked in Canary Wharf. At the time we were living in Brighton, so it was like an hour and a half drive. So I would get up with him and leave the house at 4 a.m. We'd drive into Canary Wharf, and then we would shoot my outfit of the day. And then I would get a train home and he would stay at work.
Wow, that's intense.
So that was my day to day. I'd be back home by 10. And then I'd have that whole day to post the pictures, engage with the community. And that was like my little routine, if you like. So then when the Instagram kind of grew and the brand partnerships grew, and obviously I started to create my own collection, so that took a huge amount of work involved in terms of shooting it. He was like my wingman, really, and he shot everything. And it was only, I think, after lockdown that we kind of made the decision that he was ready to retire and come and work with me full time. So now we work together daily.
As your designated photographer and CFO.
And pretty much everything else. Support
and the photos
system.
look so professional.
Yeah, he's great.
Was he really always into photos?
He says he wasn't, but he's got an eye. His mum was an artist. He's got a good eye. His brother's an artist. So I think he's just got that innate ability. And he always looks for how will I look good. He'll always try and take me at my best. And he'll tell me.
Dream husband.
Yeah. He'll be honest. He'll be like, no, you tuck that in, or you need to stand straighter, don't lean. He's that guy.
Yeah, we were just talking earlier that behind every successful influencer is a patient husband.
Of course. And if you don't have that, I think that's the reason that a lot of influencers pal up, and you'll see two mates. And it's always that thing of which one's going to fly, because quite often you'll get two girls shooting one another, and one of them will become a massive deal, and the other one might not have the same edge. And it's quite interesting to watch. I've seen it happen time and again in London.
Oh, do you see the dynamics change between the two?
I think they have to change, don't they? Just by, virtue of the fact that one's getting the opportunity, the other one isn't.
Yeah.
I never had that to play with. I always made friends with a lot of influencers because I was turning up to all these events back then. So I knew a lot of people very quickly. And I'm that girl, I'll just get on with people. Like I've got, no qualms about chatting to anyone. I think it's really important, actually. Networking is so key to having that support system, those alliances. And even when we launched LA Space, I did ask people, can I gift you a piece? Will you wear it? And some didn't, but most people did. So it paid off in that sense.
Yeah. So how do you work with influencers? Do you work in the traditional sense like a brand, or because you're an influencer and you're friends with loads of these girls, you work slightly differently? You have an advantage?
So at the minute I work slightly differently, but that is not the plan for the brand. The brand will be to work in paid partnerships. I think that's really the only way to go. I think that being able to support one another is important. So I don't want to be calling in favours left and right. But this first couple of months and first collection, it was nice actually to just see people support.
And you want to know whether they genuinely love the products, right?
Yeah, and it was a nice way for me to be able to just share, gift them something that I've made and share in that. I was owed a lot of favours. I've always historically done favours for people throughout my entire Instagram career. So it was nice to call a few favours back, to be honest. But in terms of going, long term on creating content, because there's so much value in a creator making content that you can use as well as them posting on their channel. And I think where I've gifted people in the past, I have felt quite conscious about repurposing the content for myself, because then it feels a bit like I should at that point be paying them for it. So I think just from a conscience and a moral obligation, it's really important that as a brand, we are doing paid partnerships.
And what is the best practice for a brand?
Well, I definitely think stats are really important. Yeah. I get obviously a lot of people approach me wanting to do paid partnerships for LA Space. And the first thing I'll always say is, what is it you're looking for? What kind of content do you want to create for me? And how do you envisage me using the content, if at all? And then what are your stats? Show me your stats. And usually 90% of influencers at that point go quiet. They don't want to share those stats. And I think that's a bit of a red flag for me, because stats are kind of really important. And that's what I'm proud to show mine.
Well, what are the stats you're looking for? Because a lot of the stats you can see on their page.
You say that, but I want to see impressions and reach on their main posts.
Yeah.
I want to see engagement with those that reached the post. And I also want to see specifically stories, because stories for me is where I bring a lot of value, I think, because me and my community, that's where we natter. So I'm constantly on stories, sharing stories about what I'm up to, and they're replying back, and then we're building this dialogue. So there's a lot that goes on there that isn't public. So I think those stats are quite important. And also those calls to action, because we're a new brand. So we don't have the luxury of just spraying and praying, putting 500 people in LA Space hoping something bites. Every single piece is a considered gift, if you like. And that's just the nature of a small brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's really important for me that I'm not going in blind. And especially if I'm gifting someone that I don't know, which quite often the people that are asking for it, I don't know them. So that's really where I stand. I'm sure, listen, I'm so new to this that in a year's time, this chat could be so different.
Well, we can have you back in a year's time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what is the vision as it currently stands?
So the vision right now for the brand is that we don't want to grow exponentially without taking our community with us. So we want to build our audience, really. We want that repeat customer. So I'm looking at average, order spend. I want to grow that. But I also want to grow repeat customers. How many people came back to us? So that's my focus for this first year. Not pushing out collections, for the sake of pushing them out. We're launching something this month, but then we've got a massive gap until May before we launch anything else. So then it's about creating content around existing product and not having loads of clothes just sat around doing nothing. The beauty of making a small brand is that pretty much nothing's going to go in landfill. We're going to sell out. That's the game plan. It's a small vision, if you like. There's no big plans this year.
Yeah, I love that. What's the overlap between your audience and LA Space audience?
I mean, I would say that pretty much everybody that is an LA Space customer follows me. My SEO guy is desperate to change that.
Yeah, because in a way, it's a risk and an opportunity Massively. At the same time, right?
We want to get to a position where a customer finds us through Google or through an influencer and then stays with us. And I wasn't even involved in it. But I would say that right now what I'm seeing is that if something has multiple sales around it, it's probably because I've spoken about it.
Yeah.
I've not found many influencers that have driven multiple sales.
Yeah.
There's a couple. I'll tell you later who they are. They're brilliant, and I don't even think they realise their value. It's really rare when you find someone that mentions a product and then there's like this zoom of like
I guess
sales.
It's multiples of things, right? People are following LA Space because you are the founder. And also you've got such great selling power.
Aww.
We work with you, right? And you are one of our best performing influencers.
I think as well, there's a real genuine affiliation between you and I in that I've worn the brand for so long.
Yeah, it's so genuine.
It is genuine, and I enjoy, I'm a girly girl, so I enjoy makeup, I like jewellery, I like pretty things. And I think people sense when I'm talking about the brand that I'm giddy about it. And they join me in that giddiness. And like you said before, it's great value because it isn't ridiculously expensive, but the product is brilliant.
Oh, thank you. Tell me more.
It's important though, right? It's so important.
Yeah, it's so important. I think our connection is like very, very genuine. People can see through it.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree.
What's the toughest thing you had to do along the journey as an influencer and as a brand founder?
I think some of the toughest decisions that I've had to make have been regarding having to pivot in periods where things have changed up. So knowing now that the algorithm is so changeable and terrifying across all platforms. We talk about TikTok and the fact that a piece of content that you think is crap can be viral. And then you've busted a gut on a piece of content for a month and nobody saw it. So probably the biggest, most kind of daunting process for me is how do I change things up? What's not working? How can I change it? And that goes all the way back to when I first joined Instagram. I remember I would post everything against a white wall because back then that was my aesthetic and the algorithm loved that. And then the algorithm changed up and it didn't love it anymore. And I didn't want to just get lost in the vat of other people that kept peddling something that wasn't working.
Yeah. How do you know when to switch it up and how quickly do you react to it? And do you have a constant process?
The constant process is analytics. So always analysing what's performing well versus what isn't, and just seeing what's converting. Having a brand makes that even more interesting, because most brands will not tell you what you've sold for them. Very rarely will they give you a stats report on how well you've done for them, but I've got my own brand now, so I can see how well it's done. So constantly monitoring those stats and then tweaking things accordingly. One thing that I'm seeing at the minute is that content that is storytelling, so say, for example, on Main Grid for Instagram, people have developed a passion for those kind of 10 carousel posts that are all different things that reflect that person's day or that person's week. That content's doing really well right now on social. And if you're an influencer that isn't doing that content, like, do it, because it's such an easy way of
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I think that if I was going to commission a piece of paid content from an influencer right now, I'd probably ask them to do that kind of like product placement within a carousel of other things to align the brand with other things that they love, because people are inherently quite nosy. And it's quite nice to see someone's 10 pictures of what they've been up to. So I get I understand why that's doing well. But it's just identifying those trends.
Absolutely. And is that analytics something that John does for you, or like you are obsessed with as well?
I'm obsessed with that.
So you're a numbers gal too.
Yeah, I am. But mainly because I've seen that it works. I don't deliberately. I think as well because I'm online so much, so I can't avoid it. I probably sometimes do it without even realising.
Do you ever switch off?
I do, but I do struggle. And I always read. I love reading, so I've got a Kindle and I'm always reading books. But I find that I always have my phone at the side of my Kindle. And I could be midway through a chapter and all of a sudden I'd be like, right, I'm just going to go and reply to some messages, which is terrible. But that's who I am.
Yeah, I guess it's your life and your job.
Yeah, and I can't not do it. Yeah. And because I like replying to all my messages, I could never just sit there at night and do it all in one go. It'd take me hours. So I try and do like maybe 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there. When I was driving here, John drove and I was just on my phone replying. So it's just almost trying to keep on top of it. It's like doing your homework, I look at it. Like, I need to just get my homework done so that I won't get behind. A bit addictive.
Yeah, it is. And what's next for you? Lorna Luxe and LA Space?
I think that what's next for me this year is probably to get back really in the saddle of creating content daily. I'd slowed it down last year because obviously I was building the brand. We'd moved house. My husband had cancer, so he was going through chemotherapy and stuff, and it was just all a bit overwhelming. And then I think over Christmas we'd gone on holiday and I said to John, I think I've got some kind of PTSD because I've got no inclination to take a photograph of anything. I almost don't want to look at my phone. And so I had a bit of a kind of like a week off, if you like, where I just didn't really bother with it.
But you know what? It doesn't feel like, as your fan and follower, it doesn't feel like you've paused.
And the funny thing was, when we were on holiday, the weather was really bad. So we were there for 2.5 weeks, but the weather was actually good for about 4. And so the days when it was really bad weather, I just thought, I'm just not going to take any photos of this because it doesn't bring me any joy. I'm relaxing, I'm having spa treatments, I'm drinking the rosé, eating the food. And it really forced me to just have a day off. So when I've come back in January, I felt very energised for the first time in a long time, actually.
Oh, so you enjoyed that? You enjoyed that moment of peace?
I think it did me a world of good.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
And what's one advice you'd give a budding content creator or a brand founder?
I think that so often we question ourselves and we just don't do it in the end. Specifically for content creators, it might be, oh, I'm not going to post that. No one wants to see it. What's the worst that can happen? So I think post whenever you can. And if you don't like it afterwards, you can always take it down. But to just put yourself out there, that repetition, that consistency is so key. Because if you're not online, you're basically irrelevant.
Yeah. I hear that all the time from content creators, consistency.
Consistency is so
to be
important.
the key word.
And I think that's with everything, isn't it? Even with, LA Space, consistently focusing on what's next. How can we better ourselves? What can we do better? We're constantly, workshopping the brand, trying to make it the best it can be.
Do you schedule everything in your calendar? How do you make sure you're disciplined and consistent?
So, funny enough, I've obviously watched a few episodes of this show that I've really enjoyed, and quite often that seems to come through. People are quite disciplined. Discipline is something that I struggle with. I think I actively avoid being too disciplined because in my head it ruins my creative flow. Everyone around me is super disciplined. My team, they're all on it from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. They're doing their thing. I'm very much tapping in and out, but I definitely have those tendencies of being really hyper-focused for 30 minutes, then I'm bored. I don't want to do something else now. Fed up with that. And I think that rather than try and go against it and force myself into a box, I just kind of let it flow.
Yeah.
If I'm not feeling it, I'm not feeling it. The beauty of having your own business is that you kind of write your own ticket in that sense, but the work has to get done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I probably work longer hours than the average 9-to-5er, but I do it probably, 12 till 10 or, I constantly am switching in and out of what suits me. I sometimes stay up till 4 a.m. John will be like, go to bed. You need to sleep.
Do you sometimes email your team at 4 a.m. because you
Never.
have an idea? Yeah, that's good.
I try not to message them unless it's 9-to-5, Monday to Friday. My
really
designer
good.
is very kind of like works late, loves working at 1 a.m. Will, DM me on Instagram with mood boards, and we're both real visual people. But that's our dynamic. And even though we're messaging on Instagram, it's not on WhatsApp, it's not flashing on their phone.
Yeah, so it doesn't feel like work.
It feels like, more like just hobby. And I wouldn't like that. If someone was texting me at 11 o'clock at night, like, this isn't their brand. They shouldn't have to feel obligated to reply.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you are the boss, right?
I am the boss. And I said to John, I don't feel like I'm a good manager. And he said, you're not a good manager, you're a good leader.
What's the difference?
Well, I think leadership is more about trusting people and giving them the right resources to get the job done.
Yeah.
And letting them know that if they don't feel they can do that I'm there to support them and not judge them. I'm not saying that we're like best mates and that my team are like my bosom buddies, but we've all got a lot of respect for one another.
Yeah.
We never have real big disagreements. We just get on with it. And luckily, we've not really had any bad hires. There's been a couple where it's not worked out. The first, maybe for the personality. The second, because what they were offering us was mediocre. And my kind of thought process with hiring is, if they're doing something at my level or above, then great. But if they're not able to do it at the level I want it, then what's the point? There's no point in them being there. I might as well just do it. And I think there's a bit of a control freak tendency of mine to think, well, I could have done so much better than that. And I think, if you're consistently seeing someone underperforming and not being able to do, that's the job, you had one job. It sounds strange to say it out loud, but I really believe that hiring people that are better at the job than you is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why you hire them, right?
Yeah.
You're like, we're not experts in anything.
No, I'm
as
not. I'm
founders.
definitely not.
I'm not either.
Yeah.
So like everyone I hire, they're so much better than me.
Did you feel like when you
discipline.
first started to hire for Astrid and Miyu that there was a sense of kind of obligation to get it right?
I was quite different. I didn't hire specialists from the get-go.
Okay.
I didn't have that audience. I wasn't an influencer. So it was really from scratch and it was completely bootstrapped. So I hired Sarah, who's our CMO, and she was only 24. So she was a generalist. She joined as my assistant and she was doing everything.
Yeah.
And I hired a couple of generalists since then. And then now, like, I think only in the last 5 years, I started hiring specialists like finance, merchandising, all of these people.
Because I think I look at the hires that we've made, and they're all specialists. We've got a garment tech, we've got a merchandiser, we've got an SEO guy. But actually, quite often they're having to be generalists because we're such a small brand, and there's no point hiring another person for that. Customer service, which I'm passionate about. I did customer service as a job for years. But yet we don't have a customer service dedicated person. We're all just mucking in.
I mean, initially, everyone needs to do customer services. I think it's so important to know your customers.
Yeah, and also to have a tone of voice.
Absolutely.
And set kind of a barrier, really, of like how we're going to handle ourselves if things don't go right.
Yeah.
And
I think customer services is a hybrid of marketing and social media
so true.
and sales, everything, right?
And of course, answering DMs, I become a bit of a customer service gal
Yeah.
most nights anyway.
Yeah, 100%.
And not wanting to annoy people or, I want them to come back again.
Yeah.
But if things have gone wrong or the delivery guy hadn't turned up or whatnot, it's just trying to pacify, isn't it? And explain.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also own the problem and not put it back on the customer.
Customers don't care what your process is.
No, they don't. Yeah, it's so true.
Okay, quick fire. Tips to elevate your work wardrobe.
That's a very good one. I think that if you're on a budget, stick to black leather for
Black
bags
leather?
and
Oh, bags.
accessories.
Ooh. And
I
trousers
think-
too?
Yeah, because I think that black tends to tarnish less and tends to look expensive. So if you're on a bit of a budget and you don't know what accessories, just stick with black. Brown and tan can age and can start to look quite battered quite quickly. And I also think if you're going to spend money, spend it on the really statement silhouettes. Don't mess about spending money on a white shirt. No one will know. Take it to the tailor. You could take a really cheap white shirt from ASOS and get it tailored and it'd look like Balenciaga. But certain pieces, that fine coat or that, cashmere wrap or whatnot, that's where you spend your money on.
Love that. 3 staple pieces to always have in your wardrobe.
Definitely got to have a pair of jeans in there. I love denim. They've seen me through some tough times.
Yeah. Which fit?
I like a straight leg fit and I like a high waist because I carry a lot of weight around my middle. And I think that's the most flattering.
No, you don't.
Well, I wish I was wearing jeans now. But I really believe in straight leg suits my shape with a tiny amount of lycra. Just a tiny amount.
Ooh.
In fact, we've not done jeans for LA Space because I'm so kind of scared to get it wrong. Because it's such a personal thing, isn't it? Jeans. And I don't want to just launch something and it be mediocre.
Yeah, and the fit is so important in jeans.
So important. And I think my other 2 classics have got to be a white t-shirt and a black blazer. I was born in the 80s. So I'm, my influences, Melanie Griffith in Working Girl, that kind of like 80s oversized blazers and tailoring and but worn with, a pair of sneakers and a jean. So that's kind of my aesthetic anyway. But those things seem to revolve around my closet. They work the hardest for me.
How do you pick pieces that are timeless?
I don't deliberately set out to buy things for any specific occasion. So I tend to buy what I love as I see it, which is a bit of a luxury, actually. I've not got, a specific job where I have to, 9 to 5 be dressed in X, Y, and Z. So my pieces that I'm going to have forever are usually, it's more driven by the shape and the cut. And I've probably spent a bit more money on it.
Yeah, and the leather jacket you're wearing.
Yeah.
I guess for people that are just listening on the podcast, like I've seen this on your feed.
Yeah.
Day and day
I love it.
What was the thought process of purchasing that item? Because it's a high ticket item, isn't it? You got it from YSL.
Yeah, and I think what Vaccarello did with that whole collection was about that 80s reference, that power dressing. And when we were first creating our LA Space collection, we were using a lot of those similar references because I wanted this kind of power dynamic of a powerful woman feeling confident in her clothes. And we'd launched a herringbone coat, which is called Morgan coat, which is really like exaggerated shoulders. And it feels, when you put it on, you feel in charge and in control.
Yeah, I love that coat,
by the way. Yeah, and I love that feeling. And Vaccarello's collection did that. The whole collection, in fact, does that. It's about a powerful woman. Even the models he used for the runway, they look so that like they've got their shit together. They just look great. So when I'd seen this jacket, I'd had it on mood boards multiple times. And then
so you had to get
in
it.
the end, I was like, why? I think this is the one. I think I'm going to wear this. Listen, it's quite a Marmite jacket. I know that on my DMs, a few people were like, no, not feeling that.
I love it.
I like it. John liked it. And I always think with an expensive piece, can I wear it 5 or 6 ways? And if I can, then it's like, I've got to do this because I'll regret it. And it's sold out now.
Due to you wearing it.
I don't think it is due to me, sadly, but I think it was
I'm sure it is.
I imagine they probably don't make that many of them.
Yeah, and it's a very particular piece as well.
So particular. We actually, as a team, my team had a meeting at the house last week and I brought the jacket, laid it on the table, and my garment tech was like analysing the way they'd cut. And we were all just fascinated because this is, it's a piece of art, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, it was so nice having you, Lorna.
Oh, thank you. I feel like we've not been chatting for long. It feels like I've only been here 5 minutes.
Yeah, I know. We could have chatted for ages. It was so inspiring. I had so much fun.
Oh,
it was such an
you.
exciting chat. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to follow the podcast wherever you're listening or watching. You can follow me at Connie Nam, Astrid and Miyu at Astrid and Miyu, and Unboxed Instagram page at unboxed_founder confidential. See you next week.